It's what you sign up for Saturday, baby. About to hit our slate here in just a matter of a couple days. It's going to be a big one, man. I think this weekend will have the most impactful ripple effect that we've seen to this point in the college football season. Yes, because of the timing, because it is week 7, but also because of the matchups we have. We have some major conference matchups that we've already talked about and given you our prediction for, but I think we need to take a closer look at what the ripple effect could be from the outcome of those games. Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Thursday, October 10th, 2024, last one on the face of the planet. Got a big one lined up for today, man. I already mentioned we have the ripple effect we're going to talk through. We got Jesse Simonton joining the show a little bit later to unpack his thoughts on week 7, the matchups and the things he's keeping a close eye on. But we did this last year, and I thought it was really beneficial for all of us, myself included, to have this exercise. We're going to give you our new college football playoff predictions. With more information comes different opinions, and so with the new information, we're going to give you our new opinion on who we believe is going to win each specific conference, who's going to be the auto bid from the G5, and who's going to get those at-large spots as well when it comes to the college football playoff field. So we'll have a new national championship pick for you as well. Or will we? If you remember correctly, we picked Georgia to win the national title before this year got rolling. Do we still feel that way? Maybe, maybe not. We'll talk about it. Excited to have y'all here, man. College football, nothing but college football on this very show, The Hard Count. We are grateful and lucky and all those things in between to be able to do this for a living and to have you a part of this. So if you haven't yet subscribed, now is the time. If you want to follow us on all the social platforms, at JD Pickell on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you're doing social media at, that's where you can find us. Got to make sure I thank y'all, though, before we get rolling. Yesterday, we hit over 200,000 subs. And that is not us patting ourselves on the back. That is genuinely a thank you to y'all that take time out of your day, whether it's college football season or not college football season, to consume this content. And to all y'all that have joined the party thus far, it has been a wild and exciting and just a blast of an experience. So thank you for that. Thank you for making this college football community what it is, man. Truly, from all of us here, we appreciate y'all for being dialed in and for treating college football like the year-round sport that it is. So if you're new to the show, every single Thursday, we have a couple of traditions here. College football is a traditional sport. We try and, have our own traditions to parallel the greatest sport on the face of planet Earth. And one of the traditions you can always count on this show and every single college football season is upsets. My favorite lower third, man. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the Shark Fin. We have to highlight it every single time we do this. If you're listening on podcast, no worries. Subscribe to the feed, but that's the only thing you're missing out on is that lower third. So who's on upset alert when it comes to week 7 of the college football season? I can't shake this feeling, man. I've tried. I have taken extra caffeine. I have tried to get more sleep. I cannot shake this feeling. I don't trust Notre Dame. I want to. I love Marcus Freeman. I love Riley Leonard. I love the fact that he has his mom text him, "Hey, you suck," before every game. Like, that's hilarious. They're so likable, but I don't trust them just yet. You got Stanford rolling into town. 23.5-point dogs. Feels like a big number. Now, Notre Dame can very easily cover that number and win this game if they play to the level that they're capable of playing. We talk about the roster. I love Jeremiah Love, no pun intended. I think their defense is elite. But which Notre Dame shows up? Is it the Notre Dame that took belt to behind against Louisville, or is it the Notre Dame that sleptwalk for the better part of 3.5 quarters against NIU? I don't know. Excited to find out. I wouldn't touch that spread. Actually, I'll say that again. I would not touch that spread if I'm a Notre Dame fan. I might think about it if I were just a college football fan or a Stanford fan getting 23.5 points. If Notre Dame rolls out there and plays how they did against NIU, very obvious to say they could get beat. Now, coming off a massive upset, on the right side of the upset, one that we did not see coming. I don't think anybody saw it coming outside of the folks out there inside that building in Nashville. Vanderbilt, they go to Kentucky. You would think after you beat Alabama, you slay the dragon, vibes are high, people are believing in Diego Pavia. He's on every outlet. He's on the Feinbaum show, he's on the Dan Patrick. He's everywhere. You would think that the Vanderbilt momentum would start to carry over to the sports book. Maybe Vegas is saying, hey, letdown spot, we don't trust it. 13.5, 2 touchdowns at Kentucky. I know it's on the road. I get that, and I understand the spot is a little bit tricky because you got to hit the reset button and you got to reset your emotional state after an incredible, the biggest win in Vanderbilt school history. However, I still think Diego Pavia is that dude. I think that just the way that he's wired competitively is a bit different. Like, I don't think the moment impacts him the way that it would impact the average human amygdala, which is the part of the brain that processes fear. So I won't just take Vandy to cover. I think Vandy goes into Lexington, Kentucky, and Diego Pavia, little triple option action. They get it done. They win the football game. So take Vandy plus 13.5. Take Vandy to win the football game if you're feeling a little bit frisky, all right? Now, speaking of feeling frisky, man, this spread is way too large, and I get it. I get it. You got Tennessee hosting Florida, and Florida's kind of limping into this one a little bit based on what they did early in the year. The Miami game sticks out. The A&M game sticks out. We made the Step Brothers comp earlier on in the week saying it feels like they're living out that scene in Step Brothers where John C. Reilly is trying to bury Will Ferrell in the front yard, and then Will Ferrell takes a shovel to his head and says, "No, I'm alive. You thought I was dead. I'm alive." I don't know what Florida is, okay? I will say this. I would be wildly surprised at this point in the year if Billy Napier is the head coach in 2025 in Gainesville. I don't think that's a take that's splitting the room. However, in this game, 19 of the last meetings between these two, Tennessee has won 2. And Tennessee right now is a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. This is the game, similar to Texas and Oklahoma, I wouldn't even think about touching the spread for either side. Because you could tell me Nico goes out there and he puts it together and Tennessee revs the engine and they go out and score, call it 43. And yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. This Florida defense is very gettable. But again, weird things happen in this game. There's a reason why Tennessee is 2-17, and what that reason is, I have no idea. But I think you got to put Tennessee on upset watch a little bit with this one, especially with how the offense played last week against Arkansas, y'all. Like, if they tried out there and looked that way, we don't just have issues in Knoxville. We have problems, all right? There's a difference, and we'll talk about that, again, a little bit more in depth in a minute here, but I do think that's one to keep an eye on. One more to look at here in the SEC. A lot of SEC action here for the upset watch. The Sharks are circling SEC country, is how we feel. South Carolina going to Tuscaloosa, 21.5-point dogs against Alabama. Now, I'll say this. I think Vanderbilt is better than people think. Fully believe that. Better than people think. If you thought that Vanderbilt was just a logo, I think they have started to at least question that opinion for you based on what they did last week in Nashville. However, I don't think Vanderbilt has better players than South Carolina. So the question is, if you're Alabama, are you angry and now you're able to reset and get back to your standard of football? Or are we starting to have a little bit of, we question ourselves, we get frustrated, maybe you feel like, okay, that was just a bad showing by us. We don't need to really correct too much internally and move forward. I'd be wildly surprised if Kalen DeBoer didn't have this team ready to roll. But I do think 21.5 is a lot. I also think the style of game, like Lenora Sellers now, Diego Pavia lit you up on the ground a little bit, lit you up not so much in the box score, but more so with what he forced your defense to have to honor. Lenora Sellers is a freak show athlete. Don't know if he's going rec specs or contacts in this one. Either way, with what he can do on the ground and the way that Alabama struggled to play the option effectively, it won't be the same kind of option, but you'll still see a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of quarterback, potentially inverted veer, things of that nature that I think could give Alabama a little bit of some issues if they play it the same way they played it against Diego Pavia and Vandy. So we're not calling the upsets necessarily, except for Vandy at Kentucky. All the others, I would take a very hard look at those spreads and at least give a thought to sprinkling some money on the underdog side. So that's how we feel about the upset watch heading into Week 7 of the college football season. Now, Week 7, it's going to be a movie. We keep saying this. Last week was the Saturday. They all told you, don't worry about it. How about you go make other plans, go to the golf course, go get a picnic, go enjoy the outdoors. You can enjoy the outdoors so long as you have a TV outside. You can enjoy the outdoors at a tailgate, or heck, college football is, unless you're playing in the Carrier Dome in upstate New York, it's an outside sport. You can enjoy the outdoors that way. But I will say, this weekend, there's no sneaking up on you. Like, you've had this one circled since media days. You knew October 12th was like, hey, say no to the weddings, say no to the best friend's birthday parties, say no to whatever it is. This was the weekend we had to lock in, all right? Heck, my little girl's not even here yet. She is going to be here in November. Even she knew October 12th. She's like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't be there October 12th. I gotta meet y'all out there in November, and we appreciate her for that. Program girl through and through. Now, the ripple effect, I think, for Week 7 is going to be absolutely massive. I want to go through a couple of these games here. We're not talking predictions for these games. More specifically, I want to talk about the aftermath of some of these games. So let's start with Ole Miss at LSU. This is a playoff game. This is a playoff game. Maybe not so much in a vacuum, because if LSU loses, they got 2 losses, only 1 loss in conference play. In theory, they could still run the table the rest of the way, win the SEC, have a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. That could happen. Again, in theory. Ole Miss, same deal. Like, they have a loss to Kentucky, but I think if they were to win out the rest of the way, you got to feel pretty good about your college football playoff aspirations and your chances to not just play in Atlanta, but then go on and win the SEC. But what I'm saying here is this is a playoff game because of what both these teams stare down on the back end of this game. If you're Ole Miss, if you lose this game, you're 10-2, which doesn't put you out of the college football playoff, but you still have to play Georgia. All right? Still have to go to South Carolina. Williams-Brice, nothing is guaranteed. Or you already played South Carolina, excuse me. You have to go to LSU, to Oklahoma. Or, I'm all out of whack here. Let's reset that. After LSU, you have Oklahoma. You have to go to Arkansas. You have Georgia, and you have to go to Florida. All right? So there's still a lot here in front of Ole Miss if they drop this game. It doesn't put them out of it, but again, it doesn't make you feel good about your chances the rest of the way. Now for LSU, 0 SEC losses. That is massive. But that USC loss is not aging so well. So even though you haven't lost a game in conference play, talking about the college football playoff, the loss to USC doesn't make you feel incredible. You still have games at A&M. Still have to play Bama. Have to go to Florida. Vanderbilt looks harder than it did a few weeks ago. Oklahoma, you never know with them. Like there's a lot in front of LSU here to where if they were to drop this game, it doesn't put you out of the contention in the SEC, but the climb to where you want to get to when it comes to the college football playoff becomes much, much steeper. So for either side of this, it's a playoff game, not in the sense that the loser has to leave town, as River Bailey would say, one of our producers here at On 3, but it does shake things up quite a bit and make it a lot more of a difficult peak to attain, if you will. Now, Ohio State, Oregon, kind of in that same vein, when it comes to the loser of this game, they're not out. In fact, I think most people would say the loser of this game probably still makes the college football playoff. However, this is a massive data point, I believe, for both sides of this thing when it comes to ultimately what the college football playoff committee will say about these teams, especially the loser. Because, listen, I think there's going to be 3 11-1 teams from the Big Ten when we get to the college football playoff. Now, not counting the Big Ten title game, obviously. But 3 11-1 Big Ten teams, the other of which I think will be Penn State. There's a big difference now for the team that doesn't get the tiebreaker to play in the Big Ten title game between the 5 seed potentially and the 7 seed. The 5 seed, you're playing a G5 team. You get the 7 seed in the college football playoff, you're playing like the 3rd best team from the SEC. I mean, call that whoever you want, whether it be Ole Miss, Alabama, A&M, like whoever you're drawing there, like you would much rather play the G5 team. No knock on the G5. And so, again, this isn't so much a if you lose, you're out of the playoff, but I think the way that you lose or the way that you potentially look going forward from this game, it's going to be a data point the playoff committee goes back to and says, well, how much did Ohio State lose by to Oregon? Well, how much did Oregon lose by to Ohio State? That conversation will shape a lot, I believe, of how the playoff picture is ultimately going to look when they come time to set that field, and maybe more importantly, when it comes time to decide who that tiebreaker team is for the Big Ten. The tiebreaker obviously has nothing to do with the college football playoff committee, but I do think this game obviously will have a good amount to do with that tiebreaker. Now, Tennessee and Florida. We touched on it a little bit already early on, talking about how just weird things happen and, we don't know what to think about that spread. If Tennessee covers 2 touchdowns, like that could force the hand here of some of the folks in Gainesville. Have to believe that. Like, I understand now Billy Napier. I said this before, I would be wildly surprised if he is your head coach next year. I think everyone would be wildly surprised if he was your head coach next year. However, if you get just absolutely body bagged against Tennessee, I'm not so sure that wouldn't speed up that process. Okay? Now, who do they go to? I don't know. But again, this game, in terms of ripple effect, this could be the game that forces some people to make those tough decisions. If Florida wins, yes, it's big for Florida. I don't know that it saves Billy Napier's job necessarily, but I think more so what it would mean for Tennessee if you were to have a catastrophic loss at home to a team that's, again, 2 touchdown underdogs to you. That is, let's call a spade here. In this rivalry, it's a game you should win right here with that being a 2 touchdown spread. This is the year now for Tennessee, to put it even more impactfully. This is the year where you go on a run and make the college football playoff. You compete for the SEC title. And the Arkansas game is a bump in the road, and you hate that. But if you can't get back right against a Florida team with a defense that is struggling, with an offense that is very hot and cold, I think there's, again, identity crisis in Knoxville. You're just saying, whoa, wait a second. This quarterback was supposed to be the guy to lead us to not just not just the college football playoff, but potentially the top of the SEC. We were thinking SEC title game before this year started, and then to lose to Florida, that would be the gut punch of all gut punches. And I don't know that it causes any major changes in Knoxville, but the ripple effect just in terms of vibes in Knoxville, it would be very, very bad, to say the least. Now, Texas and Oklahoma. A Texas loss to Oklahoma doesn't necessarily end their season by any stretch, because it's one loss. Weird things happen in this game, much like Florida and Tennessee, so you try not to put too much stock into what happens in a rivalry game early on in the year, or middle of the year, I suppose. And if Oklahoma wins, it injects major life into their season. That's 100% true. But I think the bigger storyline here, if Texas were to lose to Oklahoma, is the ripple effect in the SEC and just how wide open that conference becomes, man. Because look at this. You got LSU or Ole Miss after this weekend will have 1 loss in SEC play. You would have Georgia with 1 loss in SEC play. You'd have Bama with 1 loss in SEC play. You would have Texas with 1 loss in SEC play. Potentially, depending on what Tennessee does, they could have 1 loss in SEC play. And so you're looking down the line here and you're like, holy smokes. This, in some ways, sort of resets, I don't want to say totally resets the season, but it definitely resets our thought process around the season, because I think a lot of our assumptions going into this point in the year is based on the idea that Texas is the top team in the SEC. They lose to Oklahoma and they catch that loss. Okay, well, at that point, Georgia and Texas next week becomes kind of that SEC semifinal feel to it. That Bama loss to Vanderbilt, all of a sudden you're like, hey, new life injected into the Crimson Tide in some ways. So it's going to create madness if Texas does drop this game to Oklahoma. Again, we think Texas wins this football game, but just even considering that possibility of that ripple effect, that would be anarchy. And wouldn't that just be the most college football thing ever? For us to think we have it all sorted out, we think we know exactly where all the pieces are supposed to go, or at least in this game, think we know exactly who Texas is. They just beat Michigan a couple weeks ago. We think they're so great, and then they drop the game to Oklahoma with a true freshman quarterback. College football is up to its old tricks, or so it would seem. So we will watch with bated breath at what is potentially about to go on here across the college football landscape in Week 7. We got more on Week 7 here a little bit later with Jesse Simonton joining us here in give or take 10 minutes. Jesse Simonton coming to us from Florida, I believe. So thoughts and prayers to everyone right now in Florida experiencing the just violent weather right now. Thinking about y'all, hoping everyone's staying safe. Quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks bringing you the hard count today. Daily fantasy, easy to use, easy to play. Now, we play exclusively college football on this show for the most part. Last night, there was a protected play for NHL. And y'all, I know absolutely nothing about hockey. Nothing. Never sat down and watched a full game. Went to a game, didn't even watch the full game. I left a couple periods in. So all that's to say, using code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds. And if you had those promo funds already, last night there was a $20 protected play when it came to the NHL. So essentially, if you play a $20 lineup and it doesn't hit, get that $20 back, no worries. We're hot right now. I can't stress that enough. The reason why I know we're hot is because we played an NHL lineup last night based strictly off trends. No idea. Again, I just went to the trends. What are these players doing in their last 5 games? Put a 6-player lineup together. 5 out of 6 hit. I don't know. It shouldn't have hit. It shouldn't have worked that way. Again, I have no knowledge of hockey, But if you want to follow us, now would be the time. I don't know how long this hot streak is going to last. All right, so again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds. We've got a square for you a little bit later in this show. So again, Jesse Simonton here, give or take 5 to 10 minutes. So I hesitate to jump to our next segment because I want to make sure we have enough time for Jesse. But you know what? Let's do it here. Let's jump to our playoff predictions. After 6 weeks into the college football season, what we say here is when you get more information, you got to alter your opinion a little bit. We're not so stubborn just to sit on what we thought before the year. Now, we will stand on business, and what we were right about before the year. What we were wrong about before the year. But I want us to just sort of take stock of where things are right now in the world of college football and have a gauge for what I think this 12-team playoff is going to look like once we finish up those conference title games. So the best way to do this, I think, is to start with the conference title games. We'll go conference by conference here, and then also hit on the auto bid from the G5, and then we'll fill out the rest of the bracket from there. So from the SEC, I think it's going to be Texas. They're the best team right now in college football. They still have Oklahoma and Georgia on the schedule. Obviously, Oklahoma this week. I think they're the most complete team in college football to this point they've shown. And I also think they're the experience they have at the key parts, especially with what Quinn Ewers is right now at quarterback and just the steady hand he is for that team. I think Texas is going to be in Atlanta, and I think they're going to end up playing for the second week in a row, Texas A&M. And I tweeted this out yesterday. I was like, y'all, there's a real chance now that A&M and Texas play back-to-back weeks, once in College Station and the next week in Atlanta for the SEC title. And I sat down this morning, and I did my very best to put that theory to a really solid stress test. I'm like, okay, are we sure A&M can get there? If they're playing the brand of football that they're playing right now for the next couple of weeks, that is sustainable. And honestly, it wouldn't require them to win out the rest of the way. They just got to get to the game against Texas with 0 SEC losses. So what would that look like? It means they got to beat LSU. That's massive. I don't trust LSU just yet. I think they probably should have lost that South Carolina game. I think they lose to Ole Miss this week. It is what it is. They got to go to South Carolina. Got to play New Mexico State. Can never overlook that. They got to go to Auburn. Now, tough road games. I understand that. But here's the deal, man. Run game and run defense travels. You just need your quarterback play to be substantial enough to be able to maximize both of those. And I think they're going to do it, y'all. So I think Texas plays Texas A&M in the SEC title game. More on that in a little bit. In the Big Ten, we got Ohio State, Oregon this week. I think we get Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten title game as well in Lucas Oil. Feels kind of chalky. I know. I understand. I think we actually have 3 Big Ten teams with 1 loss at the end of the regular season. I just think the tiebreaker is going to break in such a way to where it favors Ohio State and Oregon playing again. I don't want to give away too much. Oregon, I think, is evolving into who we believe they are. We picked Ohio State to win the football game this weekend, but I think even if Oregon loses this weekend, they're going to trend upward. Their toughest game, for my money at least, is going to be the game against Michigan. I think they should feel pretty good about their chances to win that one. It's all about Oregon against Oregon, which sounds funny to say, but honestly, I mean, what game on that schedule do you think Oregon is losing? Illinois, I guess, could be tricky. At Wisconsin, Washington, who knows? But Oregon should be favored the rest of the way here. As Dylan Gabriel goes, they will go, and I think he's starting to go the right direction. All right, Ohio State, they may have the best ceiling of anyone in college football right now. We saw them against Iowa start to step on the gas a little bit, and it was a sight to behold. So I think Ohio State, not a super novel take here, but I think we get Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten title game. I think we have Miami and Clemson in the ACC title game. I'll say this. I don't think Miami gets to Charlotte without a loss. With that being said, I think when Miami eventually wobbles and falls over, they'll get back up, throwing haymakers. Whoever it is, I'm not too concerned about who they end up losing to, but I do think Miami gets there. And then I think Clemson, man, guess who's back? How about it, man? Dabo, just having his way. Having his way. Everyone talks about Florida State all offseason. We talk about Virginia Tech all offseason. We talk about Clemson in the sense of, well, they don't go to the portal. That's going to sink them. The demise of Clemson. And wouldn't you know it, man? Clemson back in the ACC title game. So we got Miami and Clemson out there in Charlotte. And then we have the Big 12 title game. Before the year, we had Texas Tech and Utah. Now, we still think one of those teams makes the Big 12 title game. I don't think it's Utah. I think Texas Tech has a very favorable schedule. They don't play Utah. They don't play Kansas State. The Fighting Joe McGuires right now are undefeated in Big 12 play. I think they find their way to Jerry World. On the other side, I think they play Iowa State. The Big 12 is a mess. We talk about it a lot. I mean, you have 1,000,000 one-loss teams. You got several zero-loss teams in the Big 12 when it comes to conference play. I do think we get Iowa State and Texas Tech when it comes to Jerry World. Now, who do we have when it comes to filling out this bracket? Who do we have in our 12-team field right now? Let's unpack that together. From the SEC, I think Texas wins the game against A&M in Atlanta. I think Texas is your number 1 seed, wins over teams like Georgia, 2 wins over A&M, a win over Michigan when you got it. I think that resume is going to be difficult to argue with. You can make a case for Ohio State, but I think Texas winning the SEC, they will be the top team in the college football playoff and have a bye in the first round. Out of the Big Ten, I think Ohio State gets it done, man. I think they win the Big Ten. I think Ryan Day gets that monkey off his back from the last couple of seasons against Michigan. I think they're undefeated, and I think they end up being that 2nd seed in the college football playoff. Now, the 3rd seed will be Miami. I think that loss they're going to catch somewhere along the way. Hurricane fans, it's going to be like, whoa, what's going on? Why are you picking us to lose? I think this is good. I think honestly, you take that medicine as a kid, and it tastes disgusting, but it's good for you. I think Miami will drop a game in the regular season, bounce back in the ACC title game. They'll beat Clemson. They'll be your 3 seed. Now, Iowa State, as much as I love Texas Tech, I think Iowa State probably wins the Big 12. I think it's chaos. I think there is no teams from the Big 12 that get in that large bid, so I think Iowa State is your 4th team there. Matt Campbell, man. Matt Campbell, just when everyone counted him out, he's still there. So I think Iowa State's your 4th seed. Now, our 12th seed, I think, is the G5 team. Not really a shock. I think it's Boise State. They have a bye before they play UNLV, which I think will be the biggest game of their season. I think they'll win the Mountain West with 1 loss, and that 1 loss being to a top 10 Oregon team by 3 points on the road. That dog will hunt. Ashton Genty, Heisman race, Heisman candidacy is very much so still intact. So those are your 5 auto bids. You got Texas, Ohio State, Miami, Iowa State, and Boise State as your 5 conference champs that all find themselves in the dance, with Texas, Ohio State, Miami, and Iowa State all getting a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. So that leaves 5 through 11 for at-large bids. Who are those 5 teams? Or excuse me, who gets seeds 5 through 11? I think number 5 is Oregon. They will have, I believe, only 1 loss, that loss being to Ohio State during the regular season. They'll be a Big Ten runner-up. I don't know how you make a case against them being at number 5. That is massive that they got the tiebreaker to be in at 5 over the other Big Ten team that I think only has 1 loss throughout the regular season. Again, can't prove it, just the way I feel. We're going off the field here. I think it'll break that way. The 6th seed, I think, is going to be Clemson. Because Clemson, I believe, will get to Charlotte with only 1 loss, 0 losses in the ACC, and that 1 loss, who handed that? Who handed Clemson that 1 loss? Oh, yeah, it was Georgia, the first week of the season. So I think the fact that it happens in week 1, the fact that they had no ACC losses until the ACC title game, as a conference runner-up, I think they'll be that 6th seed. Now at 7, I got Penn State. And I think Penn State will go 11-1. I think they will find themselves in contention for the Big Ten title game. Again, this is just my gut feel. So if you push back and you say, why do you feel that way? I just feel that way. I don't know. I think there's going to be some tiebreaker stuff that happens, and I think Penn State finds themselves on the outside looking in. All you did wrong to be at number 7 was lose the tiebreaker, whatever that looks like. So with them being at 7 instead of 5, you probably feel a little bit gypped. But if you're Penn State, hey, you're in the dance, all right, at the 7th seed. Now, this is kind of bizarre to say, but I think the SEC runner-up finds themselves as the 8th seed. I think Texas A&M will have 2 regular season losses, 1 to Notre Dame and 1 to Texas. Okay, so with that being said, I don't know who you can put them in front of with their regular season resume. SEC runner-up is a heck of a resume booster, but I don't think it puts them in front of any of the teams that we already talked about. So they're at 8. I think Georgia's at 9. Very bizarre seeing Georgia at 9. Those are one of those teams that we had preseason penciled in as the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. In theory, I think they could have 2 losses. Now, those 2 losses could be the best 2 losses in college football, with losses to Bama, at Bama, and a loss to Texas, at Texas. Not predicting that game right now. I'm just saying for the sake of this conversation, we'll go ahead and put Georgia at 9. Ole Miss at 10. I think they win this week. They need to win this week. However, with their toughest game left being against Georgia, I think you feel pretty good about your chances if you are Ole Miss and you kind of put the Kentucky loss to rest. It was a weird game, lost by 3 points, is what it is. Your other loss to Georgia, think you should feel pretty good about your chances to still make the dance. Then you got Alabama at 11. Bizarre seeing Alabama at 11, man. But I do think they're going to catch a loss somewhere else, whether it be to Tennessee, whether it be to LSU. I probably, as of right now, would lean towards LSU based on what we saw from Tennessee against Arkansas. So I'll put Alabama as the 11th seed. All right, so let's take a look at this bracket here, man. This is wild, but I think this is how it's going to look. Texas, Ohio State, Miami, and Iowa State all getting first-round byes. You got A&M and Georgia playing each other in the first round of the college football playoff. You got Oregon and Boise State playing each other. Penn State and Ole Miss. And how about Alabama and Clemson? For old time's sake, man, running it back. There was a minute there where that felt like it was just penciled in every year as the national title game. So that's, I think, the 12-team field that we're going to have. Now, who missed the cut from our field? Indiana, y'all, they might be 10-2 and miss the college football playoff, which you zoom out, a Big Ten team went 10-2 and missed the playoff. The thing I struggle with is what's their resume boost to get them in? Win over Michigan? If you lose to Nebraska and Ohio State, if you're Indiana, if those are your 2 losses, where's the substantial win to get you in the dance? What's the boost for you? That's how I feel about it. Love the Fighting Cignettis. Do not get it twisted. Everyone out there in Bloomington, I love your college town. However, I do think 10-2. Don't know if there's enough there to get you over one of those other teams we already talked about. For Rutgers, I think they'll be 10-2 as well. But again, where's the put me in win? Is it USC? Is it Illinois? I don't know. They have enough there. So we could go throughout like every single different pick and give you our breakdown here, but let's pull that bracket up, Big Nick. I'm gonna tell you who I think is our Final Four. I think we have Georgia and Oregon coming from the left side of that bracket, and I think we have Ohio State and Miami coming out of the right side of that bracket. So that'd be a heck of a semifinal. We kept saying this year, man, it's going to be crazy, crazy college football season. As crazy as it is, with the 12-team playoff, with these teams getting the ability to hit the reset button, I think depth and I think coaching ends up being a major differentiating factor. So just like I said, the season will be crazy. I also said it'd be pretty chalky. I think we got Georgia and Ohio State meeting up in Atlanta for all the marbles. I think Ohio State, man, wins the national title. I think Chip Kelly has got a lot more juice than we've seen for them yet offensively. I think that defense is stacked with NFL players. I think Ryan Day slays all of his personal dragons. They win the national title. They beat Georgia and Ohio State. And our second college football playoff prediction of the season is your national champion. That'd be something, man. I mean, think about the vibes in Columbus, man. After the last couple of years, fresh off of a Michigan national championship, all the Connor Stallions drama and all the talk around sign stealing, and then you get yourself a national championship over what has previously, for the last couple of seasons, I mean, call a spade here, been the standard in college football over Georgia. Excited to see it. Starts this week, but excited to see it. So let's make sense of this week now with the best in the business from On3 dropping just super hot fire columns all the time over at on3.com. Jesse Simonton. Jesse, how are we doing, man? I know you got some weather out there in Florida. Are you in Florida? It looks like you're at your home. Wi-Fi is solid. Like, vibes are good?
Vibes are high. Vibes are high right now, JD. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, we fortunately kind of, I think where I'm at, escaped the worst of it. So
good.
Helene was rough, but Milton proved to not be up for the fight, at least here, which we're fine with. So,
okay, there we go. That's a big win.
So exactly, we start the week with a W.
Always good to start the week with the W. Always good to boost the resume a little bit going into the week. Hey, speaking of resumes, man, big one this week. Well, we'll just start here because you have a column out right now on on3.com. Ohio State and Oregon. Before we get to your pick in that one, what's like the key matchups you're watching here that's going to make the difference in this thing ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, this game is just it's just ripe with storylines and narrative and stakes and, like you said, matchups. I think if you getting into like the real granular level of this game, what are we going to see from Ohio State's offense? And I don't say that in terms of like a pejorative. Obviously, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins and Jeremiah Smith. I mean, they've been lighting up the scoreboard each week, but they've been just been kind of like, playing with teams a little bit. It's almost been 2022 Georgia, where they kind of, poke and prod and feel you out a little bit, and then in the second half they just swallow you whole. I mean, they've outscored opponents 63-0 the last 3 games after halftime. But Chip Kelly hasn't really shown anything, from that playbook. And so Will Howard, is his legs going to be involved in the run game? What do they do with Travion and Quinshon maybe together? Do they have some sort of special package for Jeremiah Smith? Is this the game, JD, where they suddenly bust out a Caleb Downs play?
Whoa.
They tease that in the offseason. Oh, they're going to, that they're going to maybe play him a little bit on offense. Do we finally see it? So from Ohio State's perspective, it's what have we not seen? What has Chip Kelly been withholding? Has it been some of the 3-by-1 formation stuff that seemed to give Dan Lanning's defense some problems a year ago when Kalen DeBoer was doing that? We just saw it 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, Kirby Smart's sitting there at halftime being like, we didn't see any of that stuff on tape. Now the problem is Alabama ran out of stuff. They didn't have a counterpunch. I do think Ohio State, if Oregon figures them out, has a counterpunch. But what have we not seen? So that's I think number one for me. For Oregon, I think that there's a lot of different things you can talk about. The trenches, how good is their offensive line? Can the defensive line, stand up against the run? That's been kind of an area. Ashton Genty rushed for almost 2 bills on them there. They do get a lot of sacks. So Jordan Birch, Derek Harmon's a guy they paid a lot for out of the portal from Michigan State. That's going to be important. But this is a quarterback-driven sport, quarterback-driven, conversation. Is Dylan Gabriel up for the moment, JD? I got to see it. He did it against Texas last year. He was phenomenal in that game and was kind of the reason Oklahoma was able to rally and beat the Longhorns. But otherwise, he has not really been a big game killer. He has, I think it's like 2-9. I had it in my column. I think he's like 2-9 against top 25 teams in his career. Quarterback stats are certainly not the end-all be-all, or wins, are not the end-all be-all. But his numbers have really suffered in those games too. I mean, a lot of those games he's averaging 6-7 yards per attempt. He's going to have to shoulder a bigger load in this game if they're going to be able to beat, what probably is the number one defense in the country.
And I have 2 concerns about Dylan Gabriel when it comes to the Ohio State defense. One, I think Jim Knowles, just like you said, Chip Kelly has kind of been sitting on a few things. I'm watching Ohio State against Iowa, and I see very little stunts. I see a couple of like second and third level pressures, but for the most part, like it's vanilla, like your favorite flavor at Ben & Jerry's. Like it is just straightforward. Our players are better than your players. We're going to beat you. So that's my first concern. Second concern, with how much Oregon tries to get the football on the perimeter and tries to get it out of Dylan Gabriel's hands, they have not seen, nor will ever see, a defense that is as fast and swarms to the football like that NFL secondary that Ohio State has. What's your concern level, or maybe your feel on what Jim Knowles may be cooking up for our guy DG?
You know what? I kind of wonder if he just leans into the vanilla bean, and says, hey, man, this is pretty tasty, because one area that Oregon has really struggled in this season, particularly, JD, compared to the last couple of years of this Ducks offense, is that Dylan Gabriel, unlike Bo Nix, is not hitting explosive plays. They're not gaining these chunk yards down, with a very high success rate. And so if you start blitzing or sending more exotic pressures from Ohio State's perspective, are you kind of opening yourself up potentially, to getting got a little bit? Evan Stewart, 5-star from Texas A&M, really hadn't done anything for Oregon this season outside of a big game against Boise State. He has less than 20 or 25 yards in every other game this season. If you start putting him in one-on-one matchups, maybe he gets hot. Tez Johnson breaks, a tackle, and suddenly you've given up a couple fireworks plays. Whereas, hey, again, that vanilla stuff's working. I mean, they are just squeezing the life out of teams, and that's because you got 4 down defensive linemen that all turned down, day 2 NFL contracts. And now they're coming back and they lead the nation in pressure rate. They lead the nation in defensive run success rate. So with the secondary, like you mentioned, behind them, Hancock and those guys, Caleb Downs, I wonder if he just kind of continues to kind of maybe has some tricks in his bag, but doesn't really show a whole lot early because you don't want to let maybe expose yourself to Oregon hitting a big play, Autzen going crazy, and suddenly it's a more difficult task, uphill battle a little bit.
It's bizarre because I feel like Ohio State could kind of be in some ways a more modern version of what Michigan was last year, in the sense that, like, hey, we're just going to lean on you for 3.5 quarters, and at some point, like, you're going to break. Like, at some point, Quinshon Judkins gets loose. At some point, Travion Henderson pops a 50-plus yarder. Oh, by the way, Will Howard just kind of sprinkle him in this game. It's going to be a fun one, man. I'm excited to see it. Let's pivot here to
they're like Michigan with like a grenade launcher.
Yeah,
it's like because Michigan didn't have Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka.
No, they got the flamethrower on them.
Exactly. I mean, these guys can just throw a 5-yard slant and they're going 50 to the house, or Will Howard can just throw it like somewhere in the picture, and Smith is just like, oh, one-handed, I got you.
And I feel like, I'm glad you said that, because I feel like the problem, and I was so high on Oregon all year long. You and I talked about it. I was on the front line of the Quack
Attack.
To
win
man.
it.
I was all in, man. But then the more I look at it, and also honestly seeing them rev the engine a little bit against Iowa, I was like, oh, they haven't even done the Thanos snap just yet. Like, they're just collecting Infinity Stones. They got a lot more saved up. And seeing them be able to push the ball vertical, and I think Will Howard will have enough there. I don't know how you do both if you're Oregon. I don't know how you have enough in the box to stop those running backs, and then also have enough to play the proper amount of coverage with a 1,000-yard receiver in Emeka Egbuka and a full-on Avenger in Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and this is a game too where I think concerning for Oregon is that because it is in Autzen, they're going to have some natural advantages that if these two teams face off again, whether it's in the Big Ten or in the playoff, that aren't going to exist. And so it's almost like you better take advantage of this opportunity, because if you don't, it's only going to get more difficult.
Yeah, without question. Without question. And I think that's the other part of it too, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but like, do you save some more for potentially round 2 in the Big Ten title game? Or do you just empty the clip and say, hey, this is also going to be a data point for the selection committee when it comes time to seed us up here if we end up making the Big Ten title game, or if we miss the Big Ten title game with tiebreakers with Penn State? Like, how much do you, keep off to the side here and hope that you have something extra for that eventual next meeting, which I think we're all assuming will happen?
I don't think Oregon has that luxury, but that's why Ohio State's favored, because the Buckeyes probably do.
Yeah.
The Buckeyes, Chip Kelly can maybe say, oh, the Will Howard run games, we don't really need that today. Apparently, we'll just save that. We'll just save that for next time.
Just go ahead and put it in the back pocket and take it home to Columbus with you. Hey, another good one here. LSU Ole Miss. This is going to be. This has a playoff vibe to it, and I think based on what both these teams have after this game, that probably adds some validity to that idea. What's your feel on this one? Because I think LSU getting the bye. Also, I don't even think you have Ohio State in the Oregon game. I'm getting ADD here. I didn't ask for your pick.
Yes.
Ohio State. Okay, I want to make sure we were on the same page there. Going back to my original thought here, LSU Ole Miss. LSU coming off a bye, got a whole week now to prep for Lane Kiffin's offense and Jackson Dart. I don't know how I feel about this one. Death Valley at night, kind of an X factor in there. What's your feel here when it comes to LSU Ole Miss?
Kind of anxiety bullish.
Yeah.
Loser leaves townish.
Yeah.
I think whoever loses this game, both of these fan bases, because of the expectations, LSU's more broad, just kind of historical. The fact that the last 3 coaches have won a national championship, Chip Kelly or Brian Kelly stacked up these 10-win seasons, but they still had. It's like, is that enough? Is that enough? And then for Ole Miss, obviously, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but with good reason. I mean, this is an all-in season for Lane Kiffin, with the veteran roster, what they've done from the portal, the investments on both sides of the ball. My gut says, because you even kind of teased it there. Brian Kelly's been undefeated, at night in Tiger Stadium. There is just something about that, Baton Rouge voodoo. The fact they have had an extra week to prepare. Jackson Dart looked a little off, I thought, against South Carolina. Yeah, a little bit of concerning vibes there with the Rebels a little bit, just because if Trey Harris is limited or dinged up, they've been so kind of centered on just that Trey Harris. They just spam it. It's like the one play they've just been spamming this whole season. So if the offensive line, which has not been very good, continues to kind of get Dart harassed, LSU's defense, this is going to be a nice test because they have played a little bit better, ironically, actually, without Harold Perkins. And the sample size is fairly small, but it is still against a quality South Alabama team that has shown it can really light up the scoreboard everywhere else. And so this is going to be – I don't know how – it's like you talked about the schedule after this. Both of these teams have a bunch of hard games left on the slate. So if you're sitting there in mid-October and you already have 2 losses – that's why I think, go ahead and put a little tab, message board geniuses, while you're watching this game, because one of those is going to light up, I think, come 10 or 11 p.m., Eastern.
Oh, yeah. Notifications is going to be through the roof for either side of this thing. And I think the fact that they have a common opponent at a common spot, now given different spots in the sense of South Carolina was hosting game day, and that was massive for them, so they had a lot of juice. But, like, Ole Miss, I thought, looked better against South Carolina. And my concern, too, is what South Carolina did with the quarterback run game. Now, Jackson Dart is not Lenora Sellers when it comes to what he is on the ground, but just that giving them issues. If Lenora Sellers stays in that game against LSU, I think LSU may already actually have another loss to go with the USC loss, so 2 USC losses if you're keeping track in Baton Rouge. That really concerns me. And I understand the Death Valley at night part is just an unquantifiable. I'm really nervous here, Jesse, about LSU, and I'm really nervous about that front seven.
I will say for Ole Miss, I mentioned that I thought Dart didn't quite look right. But defensively, there's no sugarcoating the fact that Ole Miss has been quite impressive. Like Walter Nolan and, the stats may not be there, but those guys up front, Ivy, some of the other guys that they still had on the roster, obviously J.J. Pagul, scored the 2 touchdowns in the red zone, but he also had a big, TFL. He's a really good nose tackle. Is Princely Ulimaliyala going to play? The Florida transfer, that's something to watch because he is one of the best edge rushers in the country if he is healthy.
You have a pick in this one, Jesse? Are you going with Death Valley at night, or are you drinking the Ole Miss Kool-Aid?
I think I'm going to lean LSU right now, but I have not made an official pick yet. Pick 6 column comes out tomorrow, Friday.
Hey,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned, baby. Follow Jesse on Twitter and also get locked in at on3.com. That's a must for those picks. Which is going to be weirder, Florida and Tennessee or Texas OU? Both 2 touchdown spreads. Florida, Tennessee, I wouldn't touch either spread with latex gloves, like I said yesterday. That's first off. Second off, Tennessee's 2-17 in the last 19 against Florida. Texas and OU, OU has won 6 of the last 10. Like, I know there's different teams. I don't really know what to put stock into when it comes to those stats. Which do you expect to be more bizarre?
So another stat there. I think Heupel's 7 of his last 7. I think he's 7-7 against Power 5 teams.
Interesting.
So I'm in terms of weird, I would lean Florida, Tennessee, because I don't have a lot of faith in Oklahoma being able to actually have the horses to keep up with the Longhorns.
Sure.
My concern there is just, okay, OU is like, well, we want to put you in a phone booth and we want to get you on the ground and grapple and fight and all that. And Texas is like, okay, well, we're rolling in here with Colin Simmons, who is a situational edge rusher and maybe the best offensive line with 3 future, first round talent. It's just a bad recipe. And so, did Florida find something offensively? We'll see how much of a, Nico getting back at home. I think the Gators could at least make things interesting. Heupel lost to, a bad Florida team a year ago. Obviously, that game was in the swamp. But if things are going to get weird, I don't see Red River getting that weird. I would be pretty stunned, frankly, I think, JD, if Oklahoma was able to kind of pull off the upset on Saturday.
Well,
If
that's
Florida pulls
that.
off the
Yeah.
upset, it would still be surprising.
Yeah.
But just because Tennessee's offense has been so disappointing the last couple games, I think there's at least an avenue that maybe is open there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that because that's the thing that I think is maybe like an underrated, under the radar talking point just because we have so many other big games this week. But like Nico now, if those 2 turnovers against Oklahoma break a different way and Jackson Arnold's able to find the end zone a couple more times and like the narrative around Tennessee starts to swing back pretty drastically to like, okay, that was a good defense, but now we also see Arkansas and you struggle against them and opportunistic secondary historically, but like not incredible this season. Like you start to piece these things together, and I'm not sure about Tennessee like I was before. The defense is still great, but like it's a very, very gettable Florida defense, but in a rivalry spot, can he bounce back from that? Like, how worried are you about the Tennessee offense right now, Jesse?
Is it a road thing or is it, a Nico just looks like a freshman thing?
Yeah.
And right now, I think it's more of the Nico just looks like a freshman. I mean, the processing doesn't seem to be quite there. It also seems clear to me too, JD, that Heupel, has some concerns about his quarterback, which is why he went conservative against Oklahoma. And then, the run game got slowed a little bit. Dylan Sampson's still really, really good, but the run game got slowed a little bit against Arkansas. And so more was on Nico's shoulders, and he just wasn't able to kind of operate that go-go offense.
The thing that was concerning to me, I was reaching out to Aaron Murray yesterday because he does all those great quarterback breakdowns on his channel. I was like, hey, is it a Nico thing? Is it a Arkansas and Oklahoma thing? Is it a scheme? Like, what are you looking at here? Because he does the all 22 kind of cut ups, and he's like, hey, from what I'm seeing, Oklahoma and Arkansas, we're not worried about the Tennessee receiving core. And that to me was a bit of a mind bender because I'm like, wait a second, like we were talking all offseason about how that was supposed to be the difference in addition to Nico Iamaleava was you have a Dante Thornton who's turned the corner, you have a Chris Brazel who transferred in from Tulane, you have a Squirrel White, Brew McCoy back healthy, like all these weapons that are really supposed to put defenses on their heels to be able to maximize the vertical passing game. So I'm curious if we get some more answers here. Well, I'm curious to see if Florida plays them that way.
I mentioned that when I had a thing on Tennessee's offense earlier this week at On 3, and I mentioned the receiver thing as well. Braswell's been a complete non-factor. But, Mike Matthews, the 5-star signee, he hasn't really cracked the rotation yet. Thornton is kind of a one-trick pony. He's just a go guy. The route tree there is pretty limited. Squirrel White, there was some kind of optimism about him, I think, 2 years ago. He had something like 10 or 11 targets on Saturday against Arkansas for 36 yards. Yeah, it's just not going to cut it. And so it certainly seems to be they have a Nico issue a little bit. They have some receiver problems. The offensive line did not perform as well, particularly in the interior. So this is a potential get right spot because Florida's defense is certainly no big great stakes. But I think of those 2 games, that I think at least the Gators can maybe push the Vols a little bit. Whereas I think we could be having an interesting conversation about Brent Venables coming out of this, OU Texas game if it gets ugly. Because, and I'm not saying it's too soon or hot seat or anything like that, but just where the program's maybe trending, if they get bludgeoned in this game with a veteran team. I mean, you're talking about Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman and all these guys, they're not going to be here next year.
Yeah.
You're going to have whatever young quarterback, whether is it Jackson Arnold? I don't know. Or is he redshirting because he's going to ultimately transfer? Is it going to be Hawkins, who's a freshman? But Deion Burks isn't going to be here next year. This is going to be a very different looking team. And so if you get housed by your biggest rival, and then Texas looks like a rocket ship, and then it's like, man, you look like a wagon with no wheels. I don't know where this thing, so could be interesting. Now, if OU surprises, because as you said, they've kind of controlled this series, over the last decade or so, if they're able to kind of pull off some Sooner magic, the conversation will completely flip. So that's why we love college football. We don't know anything. They play the games. We'll see it.
Yeah, they like to let us know we don't know anything too, Jesse, which is
I
very kind to just consistently add that reminder to us. But appreciate you jumping on, man. Picks column tomorrow. Is that accurate?
Picks column every Friday,
Lock in, baby.
Friday morning. Pick
Lock
six,
in.
lock in.
I cut you off. Say that again, Jesse.
Yeah, I said pick six column every Friday morning.
Beautiful. If you're not yet following Jesse on Twitter, do that right now. Also, lock into all of his stuff over at on3.com. Again, like he said, picks column coming tomorrow. Shooting hot fire. So lock in there. Jesse, you're the man, brother. Glad to hear you're safe. Appreciate you making time.
Appreciate it, man.
Best in the business. Jesse Simonton. Again, I would lock in with those picks column, man. A lot of good stuff from Jesse all year round. So we appreciate him making some time, and I'm glad that he's doing okay out there in Florida with all the madness going on right there. Hey, if you're watching live, go ahead and make sure you have liked the video. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel. We're going to have a lot to talk about here on Sunday morning, man. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome. We do a Sunday sprint series on this very channel on Sunday morning. So the games happen. We stay up darn near all night trying to give you our thoughts that are coherent enough to talk about them here on Sunday morning, instant reaction style, all right? So, I mean, we crank out like somewhere in the range of 10 videos for you reacting to the day that was. So subscribe here so you don't miss that. And again, that'll also be on podcast if you want to dial in and catch that on the audio side of things. So speaking of Sunday now, Sunday, October 13th, this upcoming Sunday, all my people in Nashville, we are going to be at the Tennessee Titans, not Tennessee Vols, Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts game. We're going to be doing some content from the Whataburger truck. They're doing a touchdown tour, real good time. Whataburger, football, go together, handshake emoji, really good deal. So make sure you dial in there. Again, that's Sunday, October 13th. Make a pit stop at the Whataburger truck during your tailgate. Get ready to watch your team by securing an easy W with a hot, fresh Whataburger with a hot, fresh Whataburger. And no matter what comes out at you, make sure that you are coming out on top with a dub from Whataburger. You'll know that they are hot and fresh 24/7. See you at the game, and we'll see you at the Whataburger truck. So myself, Josh Newberg, will both be there before the game gets rolling. And look for the Whataburger truck giving out burgers. It'll be a good time. So let's finish this thing the only way that we know how, and that is with our final takes for Week 7 of the college football season. Our predictions for the game, they're yours. Our scores for the game, they're yours. All right, we've given you everything that we think about this week to this point, but we got to finish with one more round. Here we have in the clip. I think Ole Miss this upcoming weekend, tough spot, on the road, Death Valley, crazy environment, playoff vibes. Ole Miss gets a rap for being like a portal team, a transactional team. And when you talk about a team being portal heavy, there's this thought sort of that coincides with that there's not great culture involved. If Ole Miss goes to the college football playoff, if Ole Miss beats LSU on the road in that spot, they have great culture. That culture they have, a pro mindset. I think we see that in a massive way this upcoming Saturday. I think Jackson Dart and what he does on the ground will ultimately be the difference. Go over to Prize Picks, code HARDACCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. The square that we love in this game, Jackson Dart, 22.5 rush yards. He's averaging 26 in his last 5 games. We'll take the more there. I think he will be able to do a version of what Lenora Sellers did on the ground, so we love that. Go ahead and take that to the bank. And I think Ole Miss, again, kind of flashes the culture in this game against LSU. I also think that we get a glimpse of who Ohio State really can be. I think we get a glimpse of how good the Buckeyes really can be in this game against Oregon on the road. And we talked about it a lot with Jesse Simonton. I think they're college football Thanos, dude. I really do. Just been collecting Infinity Stones. They're about ready to snap. They've been keeping their cards very close to the vest, okay? It's just been appetizer after appetizer. Against Iowa, against Marshall, just serving up breadsticks, serving up chicken wings, which is great. I mean, it's enough to get the job done, but they're about to serve up the entree, okay? And it's going to be filthy. It's going to be diverse run game. Expect some option stuff. Expect some two-back sets. Expect some misdirection. And then after that, expect some deep shots downfield to really set the party off. So Ohio State, I think they've got national title chops. We know that, but we get to actually see that tangibly against Oregon in that game out there in Autzen. So go ahead and book that. We find out, I think, a lot about Tennessee this weekend. We talk a lot about the difference for teams. We said this about Oregon. There's a difference between issues and problems. Issues are like, hey, we can work this out internally. Problems are like, we have to go acquire a solution. I think Tennessee has issues, but if they have problems, we'll know in this game because that Florida secondary, ripe for the picking. All right, I have no idea what season apples and oranges are in, but I know that Florida secondary is ripe, and they are in season right now. They're allowing 9 yards a pass, 117th in America. Nico, brother, if we can't get right against the Gators at the crib, off a loss, everybody's supposed to kind of hit the reset button after a tough loss. Like this has got to be the game now. So for Tennessee, I said yesterday, I think they're still in that playoff conversation. I wouldn't delete them from that just yet. We have them in the lobby of Hotel Playoff. Got to see it this week. Because if you don't get it against Florida, it's not getting easier. Okay, it's not getting easier against Georgia or Bama, contrary to what that box score between those two teams would tell you. The Big 12 is about to have more madness. I said it yesterday. It's like the Planet of the Apes meme where it's, oh, no. That's what's going on right now, man. And after this weekend, I think we will have 7 teams in the Big 12 with 1 conference loss. Why? Because I think BYU takes an L to Arizona, okay? I think Colorado loses to Kansas State. Both BYU and Colorado have 0 conference losses. That is going to change after this weekend. Kansas State and Arizona in the mix. Very, very firmly in the mix. So again, 7 one-loss teams. God bless the Big 12, but it's going to be chaos. And that's a big reason why we think only 1 team from the Big 12, the champion, ends up making the college football playoff. Now here's our last take. Texas and Oklahoma, I think it's going to get weird. I think Florida, Tennessee probably has a higher potential to be weird, but Texas and Oklahoma in itself, like we know what we're signing up for here, man. Nick Brake, movie Stan. When he buys a ticket to a horror movie and sits down in the front row, and then at the beginning of the movie, it's Happy Family, he's not thrown off by the Happy Family. He knows it's about to be a horror movie. That's us with Texas and OU. We buy the ticket, and we see the 14.5-point spread. We see that it's going to be supposedly lopsided, and it might be. But I'd be more surprised by that than if Texas and Oklahoma goes 4 quarters. Why? Because that's what it typically is. That's what we bought the ticket for. Rivalry football, neutral site, SEC, SEC logo now on that rivalry, which Twitter was apparently had a big issue with us saying that was a big deal. It is what it is. We move forward. Top 10 Oklahoma defense. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers' first game back. Are we rusty? Are we rolling? Going to be interesting to see. I don't know if that's the game you want to come back for and have your first start against a top 10 Oklahoma defense. It is what it is. I'm just saying, it's a horror movie every time. Do not be deceived by the opening of what you see early on or what you see from that spread. Golly, man, it's going to be incredible. That's why college football is the greatest sport on the face of the planet, and I cannot wait to enjoy this weekend with y'all. Hey, quick word from our friends over at Huel. Sounds like fuel. It's not. It's Huel with an H. I told y'all, every morning now, it's become a part of my routine, and it gets me dialed in. Have a Huel energy drink right there on the nightstand. I don't know if my wife enjoys that I do this, but I do it anyway. Wake up, crack it open, smooth 200 milligrams of caffeine that tastes phenomenal, whether it be pineapple flavor or their blueberry flavor, and it's just, it gets the day rolling. So, also, Huel, phenomenal when it comes to nutrition as well as the caffeine. So if you're running late, no time for breakfast, and you're starving, we've all been there. You're racing the meetings, practice, school, pickups, whatever it is, but what if a delicious, nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? Hard Count is brought to you by Huel, the world's #1 complete nutrition brand with over 400 million meals sold worldwide. Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with our offer, 15% off with code HARDCOUNT at Huel.com. Fuel your best with Huel today. Again, code HARDCOUNT, Huel.com. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel, nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. And we appreciate y'all treating this show like something that really matters because y'all really matter to us, man. One more word here from our friends at Game Time. Game Time, fastest, easiest, most efficient. I would imagine the most, probably the most compelling way to buy tickets. I think that's safe to say. 2 big factors. Know before you buy. See the view from your seat before you buy the ticket using the Game Time app. Also, If you find a ticket in the same section and row for less than what you paid for, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. A lot of big games this weekend. I know y'all want to, or at least thinking of, hey, maybe I can find a ticket for the right price point to get me to the game. What I would recommend you do, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. Again, create an account, redeem code HARDCOUNT. That's HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Freaking love y'all, man. This is incredible. Y'all are incredible. College football is incredible. Nick Breg is definitely incredible. He's on the ones and twos. And if you haven't yet subscribed, we'd love to have y'all a part of this thing. Again, thank you for 200K. For myself, JD Piquel, we're going to keep this party rolling. And we'll see y'all next time.